I'm excited to welcome you to the 14th installment of Raising Positive Children. The series and the focus tonight is managing parent burnout. So parents, this program was created with you in mind. How many of you can relate? Managing parent burnout. Okay, extra hour of volunteer time for you guys. I could relate as well. I have 2 children, they're grown, but I can tell you when they were growing up, it was one activity after another, after another, after another. And it was a very challenging time, but we can do it because we're doing it together. So this evening would not be possible without the incredible support of our city leadership. And I'd like to recognize our city commission and city manager for supporting this event. Like I said, it's been occurring now for 7 years. Also, we are grateful for their support of this initiative. Raising Positive Children began in 2018 as a way to support parents in the essential and sometimes overwhelming job of raising kind, resilient, and confident children. So before we get started, a quick reminder. You were given a flyer. If you have it in your hands, shake it in the air. Shake it like you just don't care. There you go. That's to ask a question. So we're going to have an expert speaker out tonight. If you need to ask a question, scan it, put your question in there, and at the end of the program, we'll have a short Q&A. That's for that. So many of you are thinking, what about the volunteer time? So for my charter parents, at the end of the evening, we'll put up a QR code, you'll scan it, and that's when you'll have the opportunity to put in your hours. And if you're here and you see the code and there's a lot of people in the room, they'll also be out in the lobby as well. Everybody's getting that, right? Is everybody getting that? Wow. Okay. All right, so we're going to get started, and I'd like to introduce someone that's very near and dear to this program and to our school. Her name is Dr. Laura Cruz, and she's the director of the Student Assistance Program for the Pembroke Pines Charter Schools. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here in supporting all the mental health efforts of our city. It's clear that the city of Pembroke Pines really values the well-being of our children and our families. So with no further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker tonight. Tonight we have Dr. Claudia Vicencio. Dr. Vicencio is a licensed clinical social worker, family therapist, and the director of Outpatient Behavioral Health at Memorial Healthcare System. As a passionate advocate for accessible and holistic healthcare, Dr. Vicencio has led the development of innovative programs that promote health and wellness for children and adults. Dr. Vicencio is a dynamic speaker and educator that has shared her expertise on mental health, addiction treatment, clinical social work, and suicide prevention at conferences, public engagements, and even on television. Her commitment to supporting others and fostering awareness makes her a truly inspiring voice in the fields of behavioral health. Therefore, it is my true pleasure to introduce Dr. Vicencio.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for being here. I really want to start by acknowledging Mr. Castellano and Dr. Cruz and the City of Pembroke Pines for valuing commitment to family, to parents, all of you for showing up tonight. I know that it's not easy to come out on a Tuesday evening. I'm sure you have many things that you have to deal with, and yet you showed up for yourself and for your families. And so I am honored to be here, and I really hope that today is going to give you some strategies and some skills that you can apply so that you're feeling less burnt out by the time that you leave, and that you can apply to prevent burnout as you go on about your lives. I am filled with purpose, and my why today is because I'm here to create spaces where people can learn to function better. We all struggle with the things that happen in life. I think we're living in very challenging, anxious times, and being able to deal with that anxiety and deal with those stressors is something that I would like to be able to teach you today. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being part of this. So parenting is really challenging. And if there's anything that you get out of today is that in order to prevent burnout, you have to start by prioritizing yourself as a parent. So often we put on the pressures of society and our culture that tells us that we have to give, right? We give to our kids, we give to our families, we give to our schools, but do we ever stop to think that we need to give to ourselves? I know what it's like to be so overwhelmed with stressors that it feels like it's impossible to get through. And I have a little story, which is a little embarrassing because I am a mental health professional. But in Christmas Eve, December 24th of 2020, I found myself in a situation that I was not expecting. I thought I had more personal resources than I did. But you guys might remember a little thing that happened in 2020 called COVID, and how we were all impacted by it in so many different ways. It was so challenging to figure out what we were gonna do, how we were gonna keep our families safe, how we were gonna prevent ourselves getting sick. It was a worldwide pandemic. And in the middle of that, I was the director of Outpatient Behavioral Health Services for Memorial then, and we were one of the only mental health centers in Broward County that didn't close their doors. That means that people were still coming in. Rather than just switching to full virtual services, we had people coming in and people were very stressed out, and we were trying to figure out on a day-to-day basis how we were gonna help those people without getting them sick or exposing them to each other. So on top of that, my mom had cancer and was being treated for cancer, but don't worry, this story actually has a happy ending because my mom is actually here today and it's her 75th birthday. So, happy birthday, Mom. So back to December 24th, 2020, my best friend and my son and I had decided that we were going to pick up a 3-course meal from our favorite restaurant because we wanted to support this restaurant and we wanted to have a nice meal. We remember everything had been closed. So I drive down to Miami, I have my son in the car to pick up this food, and I take the wrong turn. And I get off in the Port of Miami, which is under construction and pretty much desolate. There's nobody there. And I get lost. And I cannot, for the life of me, figure out how to get out. And I'm driving in circles and I'm driving in circles, and it's just, I start having a panic attack. At the time, I didn't realize it was a panic attack. If anyone's ever had a panic attack, it feels like you can't breathe. Your heart is pumping and it feels like you're having a heart attack. But at the time, I just knew that my negative thoughts were telling me, you're never gonna get out of here. I was imagining looking for candies and ketchup packets in the glove compartment of the car. I didn't know how my son and I were gonna get out of that situation. And I was crying and breathing really shallow. And all of a sudden I stopped and I realized there's no way that I'm gonna get stuck here. And I realized that my son is in the back seat, and sort of this cold dose of reality hits me. And I just stopped, I paused. And I'm gonna teach you that today, that the first thing that you can do when you're feeling overwhelmed is just pause. And I took a breath, and I looked at my son, And I dried my tears and I said, there's got to be a way out of this. And sure enough, I was able to find a person who showed me how to get out of there, and I got out of that situation. But I tell you this long story because I know from personal experience that when things start stacking up, when the stresses of daily life start building, it feels overwhelming. It feels like you can't get through it. And so we need those skills when things are going wrong in order to get out of it. And we also need to be able to prevent it. At the time, there were so many things going on in my life, and there was this worldwide pandemic happening, that it was really just very hard for me to negotiate something as small as getting lost in the Port of Miami, which if you've ever been lost in the Port of Miami, it's not that small. It's actually pretty overwhelming. So the American Psychological Society did a survey in 2023. They wanted to know what's stress like in the United States. And they found that compared to other adults, parents reported, almost 50% of them reported that they were feeling on most days so overwhelmed that they couldn't get through. Think about that. Over half of parents are feeling so overwhelmed on a day-to-day basis that they feel like they can't get through whatever's coming at them. And why is this? Parenting is hard. Parenting is so challenging. I mean, the things that we have to deal with, from trying to figure out multiple different schedules, how many decisions do we have to make in a day, the changing demands of our children as they grow and develop. And then on top of that, we're dealing with social media, we're dealing with financial straits, we're dealing with just the general worry of keeping our children healthy and safe. So it's no wonder that we deal with burnout at such high levels, right? So the problem is, though, that if we keep burnout going, if we keep stress going without knowing how to deal with it, it can affect our mental health, and our mental health affects our children's mental health. It makes us feel like parenting burnout is particularly dangerous because it makes us feel ineffective as parents. It takes the joy out of parenting that we normally feel, the smile that I get when I look at my child when he's done something and he's like, hey, Mom, look at this. All of that gets zapped. So it isn't just exhaustion, but we actually feel detached from our children. And the danger in that, and research has shown this, is that if it goes unchecked, parenting stress can lead to harmful behaviors. It can lead to neglect of our children and even violence. So the fact that you're here today to talk about this topic or to listen about this topic and hopefully learn something is a real preventive in how we can be better parents and a better community. And so once again, the importance of dealing with burnout and preventing burnout is that it's going to help us from having mental health issues, having panic attacks in the Port of Miami, and being able to be the best parents that we can be. So today we're going to talk about 3 main strategies, and in those strategies we're going to talk about different skills that we can use that are right in the moment, as well as skills that can prevent burnout in the long term, make us more resilient over time. So let's take the first steps together. And the first step is taking care of yourself. Like I said, to prioritize yourself is the most important thing that you can do as a parent. Dr. Daniel Amen, who's a psychiatrist from Stanford, and he does MRIs of the brain of, I think he's done over 5,000 MRIs of different people, and he says parenting is a selfish endeavor. Now, why would he say that? We don't think of parenting as selfish. We think of parenting as being selfless usually. But if we don't start with ourselves, we can't take care of our children. I think most of you might have heard this metaphor that we use. We use this in mental health very often, which is when you're in an airplane and there's turbulence, or they're telling you what to do, and the oxygen mask comes down, who puts on the oxygen mask first? Do you put it on your child or do you put it on yourself? You put it on yourself first, because if you don't do that, you can't take care of your child. And so these are the things that make prioritizing yourself, it's that same analogy. We have to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of our children. So one thing to think about is the mnemonic ABC please. And this comes from this treatment called dialectical behavior therapy. And the way that you do it, the ABC part is you start by accumulating positive emotion. That means have positive experiences in your day-to-day. This doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be big. Something small that you can do for yourself. How about you take 15 minutes to connect with a friend and talk to them on the phone that you haven't spoken to in a long time? How about you take a walk after dinner with your kids? Anything that could be something that's positive that makes you feel good. Going to the beach and just watching the waves. So many different things that we can do that are positive experiences. But the goal is that we're intentional about doing them and that we do them on a regular basis. That's your A. Your B is do something every day that makes you feel confident and that's working toward your goal. Maybe you're trying to learn a new language. Maybe you are trying to get a skill, get a certification. Maybe you're trying to connect with people. You're working on a project. Doing something that makes you feel competent and confident every day is really important. And these are the things that build resilience over time. And then the C is cope ahead. If you know that you're going to be in a challenging situation, maybe you have a parent-teacher conference coming up and you know that it's not going to go great. You imagine yourself dealing with that situation. You prepare yourself for the stress that you're going to experience ahead of time. So often when we are thinking about something that stresses us out, something that is going to be difficult or challenging, we don't want to think about it. We say, I don't want to think about it. I avoid thinking about it. But what happens when we do that, it gets built up in our head as this terrible, horrible thing. But when we take the time to imagine that situation, and sometimes even imagine what's the worst thing that could happen, and then imagine yourself dealing with that worst case scenario, you will feel more competent and confident when you go into that situation. And then the please part is the basic of any emotional resiliency and any prevention from burnout. And that's taking care of any physical illnesses that you have, making sure that you're following up with your primary care doctor if you're experiencing pain or you're dealing with anything, any chronic illness, making sure you're dealing with it. Eating a balanced diet, eating well as best as you can. The A is avoid mood-altering drugs, alcohol, and I would throw electronics in there. Be mindful of how you're using electronics because we know that it's associated with negative mood states. The S is getting balanced sleep. Sleep is one of the hallmarks of mental wellness and health. So if your sleep is off, addressing that, learning how to sleep better is really important. And I know that it's not always easy, but knowing how to sleep better, having a sleep protocol or different things that can help you with your sleep, that's your S. And then your E is get exercise. It could be going for a walk. We know that walking or a cardiovascular activity at least 3 times a week for, I think it's 30 minutes at least, is as good of an antidepressant as taking a pill for mild depression. So if you're feeling down, having a regular physical exercise routine is key to dealing with that. All right, this one is about taking care of your mental health, what's going on in your mind. Have you ever been in a situation where you're stressed out, maybe you're feeling down, and then all of a sudden these horrible thoughts pop in your head? I'm stupid, I can't make it, I'm not good enough. Has that ever happened to anybody? I know when I was having my moment in the Port of Miami, that's the automatic negative thoughts, we call them ants, that popped into my head. And the problem is that these ants make us feel really bad about ourselves. It's these stories that we tell about what's happening, which aren't true, by the way, but these are the stories that make us feel like we can't get through it, that we're helpless, that we're hopeless, and that we can't manage. But once again, these are your thoughts. We have this saying that says, don't believe everything you think. Also, don't believe everything you feel. So when ants come up, and you'll think of me the next time something happens, maybe you made a small mistake, and all of a sudden you're telling yourself, if I can't get this right, then I must not be a very good parent. Or I know that if I try to do that, I'm gonna fail. This is research that was done by Dr. Aaron Beck, who is the father of cognitive behavioral therapy, and ants, automatic negative thoughts, they call them cognitive distortions. There's these thought patterns that we have, and we all have them, that make us have a negative bias, like we can't make it, or we can't get through it, or that person doesn't like me, or if I feel bad about something, then it must be bad. So don't believe everything you think. And if you're interested in ants, there are tons of research. If you look up automatic negative thoughts, there's a whole list of them. These have been studied and cataloged for years. So when ants show up, what you want to do is recognize what they are. What type of thinking is this? Am I catastrophizing? Am I thinking that the worst possible thing is going to happen and I can't get through it? That's what happened to me when I got lost. So if ants come up, and they will, what happens is that over time, if we let these narratives go unchecked, what it creates is a negative bias. My brain is looking for all the ways that things could go wrong. Maybe I wake up and I say, this is going to be a terrible day today. And I start immediately going through a list of all the things that I'm stressed out about, that I'm worried about. How did I set myself up? Did I set myself up for success that day at the first moment that I opened my eyes? No, I didn't. So if ants do come up, and they will, because they happen to all of us, the first thing you want to do is practice the pause. Just take a minute. Take stock of what your thoughts are, what's going on. Just reflect, hey, what's going on here? Am I telling myself that everything is going to be bad, that things aren't going to work out? And then you want to challenge those thoughts. So you want to tell yourself, is this true? Is this really true? And then look for evidence. What is the evidence that this is true? And is there any evidence that it's not true? So you sort of do this mental exercise to challenge the thoughts that are coming up without just believing them wholeheartedly. They call them automatic negative thoughts because they pop up on their own, and if they go unchecked, they will run rampant through our mind like a pile of ants. So reframe the thought. What if everything did go right? Am I telling myself this because I had a bad experience, but that doesn't mean I'm going to have a bad experience the next time I do this? So try to think about the thought, try to think about what is worrying you in a different way, a more positive way, hopefully. Practice mindfulness is your ability to just sit with what's going on. Sometimes we have negative emotions that come up. Maybe we're angry, maybe we're anxious, and the first thing we want to do is push the emotions away. We don't want to feel them. I think that's natural and normal. However, the only way to get through it is to just take a moment and allow ourselves to feel it. That's what mindfulness is about. You may have tried deep breathing. You may have tried just letting your thoughts go by. Mindfulness can be really helpful in addressing ants when they come up. A positive bias is just like we could cultivate a negative bias and tell ourselves that, things aren't going to work out. We can cultivate a positive bias. What if things do work out? Today's going to be a good day. That's a positive bias. And we look for things. Some of you keep gratitude lists. I know I do. What are the things that I'm grateful for today? That's a way to cultivate a positive bias. And then talk to people that are positive and supportive. I think they say misery loves company. And so if you're experiencing a lot of ants, but you're spending time with people that are very negative, they may be complaining about other people, all they talk about is their problems, that's probably not going to be the most helpful person, right? Find someone who can be more positive and who can help you check your ants. Hey, by the way, I'm thinking that when I go into this situation, these are the thoughts that I'm having about it. Can you give me some feedback? Have a trusted friend or somebody that you care about that's going to give you a more positive approach to what's going on. And then as a fundamental, go back to your ABC, please. So positive experiences, doing something that helps you feel confident, and then taking care of all the physical illness, exercise, all those good things. In the moment, something happens, you're lost in the port of Miami, and you're stressed. And the thing to remember is that it takes 90 seconds for the stress response, the fight or flight response, to go through your body if you're not feeding it with ants. The important thing is, can I sit with this uncomfortable feeling without trying to push it away, without creating a story in my head about how terrible things are or how terrible I am? And in 90 seconds, that feeling will pass. So if you are feeling really stressed out and you notice that you're out of control or that you're feeling out of control, look at your watch, set a timer for 90 seconds, look at a clock, and know that in 90 seconds that feeling will pass. I call this technique the 3 L's. So the first thing when you're having a strong emotion to something or feeling out of control is to listen. Just listen to yourself and what's happening without trying to push it away. The second L is to leverage it. What can I do? Is there something I can do with this emotion? Is it trying to tell me something? Emotions are just messages or signals. If I'm feeling angry, is it because somebody wronged me? Do I need to speak up for myself? Those sorts of things. And then the last L is to let it go. Because we don't need to hold on to this stuff. There's plenty of stress going around without us creating our own. So another way to build resilience and to prevent burnout, now that you know all about ants, is to set boundaries. And boundaries are hard because a lot of people don't know what they are. A boundary is something that you'll do, or that it's a choice you make or a behavior that you do that requires nothing from another person. How often have you found yourself talking to maybe your child and saying, if you don't put that down right now, I'm gonna start yelling and screaming, or something like that. So now, is that a boundary? Did I set a boundary with my child? No, I didn't. I made a request, which is for them to stop, put that thing down. But a boundary would say, I'm gonna take you outside if you continue to scream. So I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take you outside, and I mean, we've had experiences when our child was maybe having a tantrum in the grocery store, and rather than negotiate through the tantrum, maybe we took them outside and said, hey, you can't behave that in there. I picked you up. Now, they have to be little enough to be able to be picked up. But so the idea with a boundary is something that you're going to do, and it's hard to think about, I'm going to do this thing no matter what you do. If somebody is say you have a loved one that, this is a tough case, but you have a loved one that has a drinking problem or is using drugs. We spend a lot of time trying to fix that person. If you keep drinking, I'm gonna leave you. If you keep drinking, I'm gonna XYZ. The boundary is, no matter what they do, what are you going to do? So I'm gonna seek out help through Al-Anon, for example, or I'm gonna educate myself about how much alcohol use disorders can affect people. I'm gonna seek people that are like-minded that can give me support. That's a boundary. Or I choose not to be around this person if they're drinking, for example. And when we can set boundaries around our time, around our emotions, around our physical space, we have more energy to be better parents. So I need 15 minutes to take care of myself when I get home, and then I'll help you with your homework. That's a boundary. And it's a boundary around time. Maybe I need to come home, I need to take a shower, and then I'll be there for you. So why is it so important that as parents we set boundaries? It's gonna prevent burnout because we'll have more time for ourselves. Remember, the name of the game is put the oxygen mask on yourself first, right? It also models healthy behavior for our children because it shows that this is how we care for ourselves, this is how I care for me, and it shows them that they can do the same thing for themselves. And it improves relationships because we're showing up as our best selves, and the other person can also show up as their best self. So in order to set boundaries, this is what you need to remember. What is it that I need? What's important to me? You have to start with that. Otherwise, you're not going to know what kind of boundary you need to set. Maybe when you get home from work, you do need 15 minutes before you can just jump right into homework. But what do we often do? I need to come home, I need to start cooking, I need to help you with the homework, and then I'm gonna take care of myself after all that's said and done. But what happens in that time that I didn't respect my need for some space after I get home from work? I'm more reactive, I'm more likely to yell at my kids, I'll lose my temper, right? That's why boundaries are so important. So what is it? So taking stock of what you need, then communicating it. When I get home, I'm gonna take 15 minutes and then I'll come out. Being consistent, and this is probably, I think, at least for me, the hardest thing is making sure I'm keeping that boundary and I'm continuing to take care of myself in that way. And then other people have boundaries, and it's important to respect their boundaries as well. So in order to maintain healthy relationships and to practice self-care, you have to start with boundaries. This is how we stay energized for our children and our families. I feel like there's so few of us. Does anybody have any questions? So why is it challenging to set boundaries? I think sometimes we're afraid of the conflict that's going to happen if we set a boundary, such as, I'm not going to be around if you're drinking. If you start drinking, I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to go to my friend's house. I think sometimes we feel guilty. How much pressure do we feel as parents to be everything for our kids? To put ourselves last, because that means that I'm a good parent if I'm sacrificing myself. And maybe what I'm saying is a little bit controversial and you're not used to hearing it, that you need to prioritize yourself so that you can be there for your kids. Sometimes we're not clear on what it is that we do need. And that's why it's important that we have that quiet time with ourselves and our thoughts so that we can figure out what is it that I need so that I can communicate it as a boundary. How often do we overcommit? I know I'm queen of saying yes to just about everything, but I've had to learn, as my boss who's here has told me many times, that I need to learn to say no. Because we volunteer for this, and we help out with this, and my neighbor needs this, and my kids need this, and then before we know it, we're stretched so thin that we have no time and no patience. We have no time for ourselves, and we have no patience for our families. And then sometimes we have emotional barriers to creating boundaries. We're just not sure how to do it. Again, it's feeling guilty. Those things can prevent us from setting boundaries. So we acknowledge that it's a challenge. But I'll tell you that you cannot give to your children what you're not giving to yourself. So ask yourself, what thing can you do for 5 minutes today that's just for you? 5 minutes is gone in a flash. What's one thing that you can do, and that goes back to building positive emotions, positive experiences, something that's just for you, nobody else. And that impact is going to have on your children is because you're taking better care of yourself so you can take better care of them. So this is one of these quick skills that you can use in the moment. You're feeling stressed out. You realize that your ants have gotten out of control. Maybe you're yelling. That happens. You do the physiological sigh. So I want everyone to do this with me, all right? You ready? We're going to relax in one breath. So you're going to breathe in through your nose, just a regular breath, and then breathe in again, and then breathe out slowly. You feel your shoulders relax? Let's do it one more time. So in through your nose, and then again, and now slowly out. The physiological sigh it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It activates the relaxed response. It's something that you can do at any time, and especially if you're feeling stressed out and out of control. Now I know, when I'm in the middle of feeling really stressed out and out of control, the last thing I remember is to breathe. But I can tell you from experience, being in the middle of a panic attack, that it was that moment when I stopped and took a breath that I was able to marshal up my resources, figure out what my next steps were, and get myself out of that situation. So this is a physiological sigh. All right, strategy number 2, set realistic expectations around parenting. How many of us feel like we have to be the perfect parent? We have this image of perfection. Maybe I have to be the perfect employee, the perfect friend, the perfect daughter, the perfect parent, and it's that perfection that becomes overwhelming. It chokes you. The way that we talk to ourselves, the stories that we tell ourselves, that's what our children learn. So our children, when they grow up, they're not going to talk to themselves the way that we talk to them. They're going to talk to themselves, and they're going to tell the stories to themselves that we tell ourselves. And that's why it's so important that we're modeling the best behavior that we can. Dr. Becky Kennedy is a psychologist. She does a lot of work around setting boundaries and around repair, because sometimes we make mistakes as parents, and we need to be able to fix those mistakes. So I was talking about boundaries and the importance of figuring out what your needs are. One way to do that and to be more intentional about how you approach your life is to sit down with a blank piece of paper and ask yourself, what do I want? What do I want for my relationships? What do I want for my family? What would I like for my children? I think I'm missing one here, which is health. But what do I want for work? Spirituality, money. These are things that we can really sit down and think about. And it isn't a one-time exercise, and it isn't something that we can just do quickly. It takes some time to think about. But when you do that, then you can gauge your behaviors and ask yourself, am I doing something right now that's aligned with what I want? Or am I sabotaging what I want? So if it's important for me to have to teach my children to be resilient and independent, but I'm doing everything for them, then is that aligned with what I want, right? And so often We do for our kids because we love them so much, but we don't let them struggle or fail, and they need to be able to do that. It's hard to sit back and say, let me pick that up for you. Oh, you're bored? Let's see what we can do. But so often, we're in caring for them, we're actually robbing their self-esteem because we're not letting them go through those challenges. So take a moment, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, and make yourself a list of the things that you would like for yourself in whatever area of your life is important to you. Maybe just start with one. And then once you do that, you can set boundaries around the things that you need to do in order to achieve those goals. And you can match your behavior, is what I'm doing, meeting those goals that I said that I had. If you are a perfectionist, like I am, you want to get real about that, because perfectionism is a surefire way to be burnt out. And you need to be able to be realistic about how much time you have in a day. What are the important relationships that you want to invest in? What are my values and what's important to me? So if you can start with your values, then it's so much easier to be able to put in the steps to prioritize yourself. And one way to do that is to practice self-compassion, because we all make mistakes. We're human beings. Dr. Christine Neff did research on self-compassion. It's called mindful self-compassion. So I want you to think about a small mistake that you made recently. It doesn't have to be anything big, just something small. You think about it, and when you think about that, how do you feel? I know I did something, it wasn't even anything major. I forgot to order something when I was supposed to order it, and then I missed the deadline. And I came down on myself so hard. Every time I think about it, I feel like I have this, like my heart just cringes. You guys have a moment like that? Some mistake that you made? Now, we turn that around through self-compassion. You start with mindfulness. So I acknowledge that, yeah, I made a mistake, and it doesn't feel good. And now I'm going to think of myself and talk to myself the way I would to a friend. And if my friend said, hey, I messed up, I didn't go on time, and I didn't order that thing I was supposed to get. My friend would say to me, you know what, it's okay, it's no big deal. We'll figure out another way. It doesn't, that thing wasn't as important, right? We don't talk to ourselves the way that we talk to friends that we care about. We don't. So self-compassion is a way of saying everything isn't perfect, but can I show myself a little bit of grace and kindness? And then the last step is remind yourself that you're human. Everybody makes mistakes. It's impossible to be perfect all the time. So this is a quote from Dr. Kristen Neff, but when we practice self-compassion, rather than pulling ourselves down and making ourselves feel bad with the stories that we're telling ourselves, we turn it around and we practice kindness toward ourselves. We remind ourselves that it's the human condition to make mistakes and that we don't have to be perfect in order to be happy. And instead of becoming drained by our thoughts and our mistakes, we're able to be more energized and more present. So what happens when you do make a mistake? Especially with our children and the people that we care about, repair is what's important. Our children don't need perfect parents. What they need are parents who can repair, because we are going to make a mistake. We're going to yell. We're going to be late for pickup sometimes, as my son knows very well. Repair is the act of going back to that moment where there was some sort of disconnection with the person that you love, with your child or somebody else that you care about, and taking responsibility for what you did and acknowledging that it had an impact on that person. And this is important because it builds trust. How often do we go back and say, you know what, honey, I lost my temper, and it's not you. I was really stressed out about having to do so many different things, and I know that I hurt your feelings, and next time I'm stressed out, I'm gonna take a time out so that I don't yell at you. That's it. It takes just a second. But repair is so powerful because it allows us to go back to the moment and rebuild connection when connection's been lost. It teaches kids accountability because it shows them that it's not just saying, I'm sorry, but it's looking for connection again and saying, I know that I played a part. And it promotes emotional resilience because if I can acknowledge what I've done and I can look for opportunities to do better next time, I'm going to be more resilient. So when you make a mistake, instead of beating yourself up over it, because that's what happens, right? Say you yelled at your kid. Now you're telling yourself what a terrible parent you are, you're feeling guilty, and that story keeps you from being able to connect with your child because you feel bad. Maybe you did it to your partner. Maybe you lost your temper with them. So instead of reliving it, remember we have self-compassion, we can deal with ants now. Now I can go back to that person and look to connect with them rather than push them away because I'm beating myself up and I feel so bad. So step by step for repair. Number one is acknowledge. I think the first step to repair, you realize that you made a mistake. There's a moment of disconnection. Is sitting with that moment with yourself and forgiving yourself. That's the first step. And then you go to the person, acknowledge what happened, take responsibility. You had a role to play in the situation. You're not making excuses, but you're saying, yeah, I did this thing. And then you express empathy. Show understanding how, I bet that was pretty scary when mom was yelling and screaming. And then open the conversation. So instead of just saying, I'm sorry, now you're saying, next time I want to do better because I know that it made you feel bad. And those are the steps to repair. So start with yourself and then go to the other person, and your whole goal is to connect. You don't have to get it perfect. You don't have to know these steps by heart. It's your willingness to make amends and to connect again with that person that matters. So the emotional bank account. That is this something that we invest in with our children. It's the things that we put in that make for a positive relationship over time. And we do this every single day, right? This is my investment in you and in seeing you in a positive way and having good experiences with you. So the 9 most important minutes of every day are the first 3 minutes when they wake up, the next when they come home from school, or when you have that sort of come home from work 3 minutes when you see them again, and then the 3 minutes when they're going to bed. If you can take just those 9 minutes and use those as time to connect. Put the phone down, talk to them, have a conversation. Those 9 minutes are so powerful. The 20-second hug, I don't know, I'm a hugger. Anyone who knows me knows that I'll hug you and I'll stay in there for a little bit of time because it takes 20 seconds for the body to release oxytocin, not OxyContin, oxytocin, which is, it's the feel-good chemical that allows us to connect with people, and it's actually a stress reducer. So go out there and give someone a 20-second hug, especially your child. The 4-to-1 rule is for every 1 correction or negative interactions, have 4 positive interactions. So it means you have to be very mindful or intentional about the types of interactions you have with your kid. If you find that you're yelling and screaming and or correcting, and that's where you're spending most of your interactions with your child, that probably means you're burnt out, you're too stressed, and you need to reset and go back to your ABCs. So that's the 4-to-1 rule. Be an active listener. How often someone tells us, or your child says, oh, this thing happened at school, and we jump into problem solving. Well, you know, you should think about doing this, and then what if you did that, and did you try talking to them, and then what about this? Active listening says, tell me more about that. I want to know what happened. How do you see it that way? It's being curious instead of going into the default mode where we're trying to tell people how to solve their problems. Active listening means just that, just sitting and listening, asking questions. If your kids make mistakes, let them make those mistakes, don't rescue them. And they will make mistakes, but what are you teaching them by letting them make those mistakes? It goes back to self-compassion. It goes back to ants. We all make mistakes, and it's okay. And you know how to problem solve? I'm gonna help you problem solve, but I'm not gonna solve your problem for you. And then also being willing to set limits. That goes back to boundaries. What are your boundaries as a parent? What are your goals and dreams for your children? And in order to do that, you need to be able to set limits with your kids. Okay, so the third strategy is know when you need to seek professional help. Know when you do need to talk to somebody. And that's important because like I said, if you're feeling out of control most of the time, if your automatic negative thoughts have gotten the best of you and the narrative, the stories you're telling yourselves are out of control and you're feeling bad, you need to talk to somebody. That's what mental health resources are for. So once again, you practice the pause and realize, okay, what's going on? Take a minute to reflect. What am I feeling? Am I feeling depressed? Am I feeling sad? Am I anxious? Take a moment to take stock on what your feelings are. Ask yourself some questions, get curious about what's going on. And if you see patterns, like I tend to have arguments with people everywhere I go. Okay, something's going on there, right? Look for perspective, somebody that you trust. Maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a friend. Ask them, hey, this keeps happening to me. What do you think? And then try to find solutions to that problem. Like I said, if you have ants, automatic negative thoughts that are unchecked, that can lead to mental health problems. So how do you know when you do need to seek help? Is if you're having thoughts of suicide, having thoughts of wanting to hurt yourself or somebody else, that's a sign that you need professional help. Some people will go to their primary care doctor if they're uncomfortable going to a mental health professional. I know that school has a lot of resources, and I'll share some resources, and we've had some resources up as well. If you're feeling sad most of the days or excessively anxious 5 out of 7 days or more, then you know that you should seek professional help. A lot of times when someone has major depression, when it's a disorder, the person has a hard time concentrating. They can't focus. They trying to watch a TV show and they keep having to rewind because they're losing track. Or they're trying to read something and the words just look like, a bunch of mush on the paper. So you know that you should be seeking professional help when your ability to function, to get through the day-to-day, you're unable to do it, when it's too much. You might start isolating, avoiding friends, or you've had major changes in your sleep. You're eating too much, sleeping too much or too little, or in your sex drive. Other warning signs are overusing substances, having a hard time just carrying out daily activities, physical ailments that start to stack up, headaches, stomach aches, those types of things. And then if you're having insomnia for multiple nights, it's definitely time to seek professional help. This is the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Just like you dial 911 when you have an emergency, 988 is a national number. Doesn't matter where you are in the US. It will link you with local resources and a crisis professional that can help you. I find this to be really a helpful resource because sometimes it's not us that's struggling, but somebody that we care about, and we don't don't know how to help that person. So if you're with somebody who is having thoughts of suicide or in a crisis, you can call that number with them and they'll help walk you through. They'll talk to that person and they'll find resources for you. This is another excellent resource. It's called Mental Health America. They have a website, and you can take a mental health test on their website for yourself or for your child. And it has different conditions. If you ask, and it'll go through different questions, and it'll tell you you should seek professional help if you meet certain criteria in their screenings. And then the last thought I want to leave you with, and I've talked a lot about what is it like to go through life with these automatic negative thoughts, feeling burnt out. And I'm going to posit to you that being happy, or at least acting happy, is a moral obligation. Have you ever had an experience when you've been home yelling, screaming, upset, maybe arguing with someone, and someone comes to the door, and then all of a sudden you answer the door and you're okay. You're no longer yelling and screaming. That means that, to me, that you're able to get it together. You just need to have some tools in place in order to do that. And if we can go around the world happier people, less burnt out people, then our communities, our children, and our families are gonna be better for it. Because if you've ever been around someone that's very negative, that's extremely irritable, that's angry all the time, that's not a fun person to be around, and it's not a person that makes you feel good to be around. I think the more that we go out into the world in a happier state of mind, a more calm state of mind, the better the world is gonna be. Because this is how we impact our communities, our children, our families, and most of all, ourselves. Okay. Question and answer. Am I okay on time?
Thank you so much, Dr. Vicencio. Such wonderful content. I learned some stuff myself too. I was back there doing the, and I really enjoyed that one. And we got some lots of questions. One of the first popular questions that we received was just about accessing the content. And so I wanted to let audience members know that the content will be available on our city website within a week. So you will all have access, because I think some parents wanted to review those resources a little more and those strategies. All right, so I'll get started, because as I said, we had quite a bit of questions coming in. So the first question was, I don't remember my parents going through this with my siblings in the early 70s and 80s. What do you think has changed?
That is a good question. Yeah, I think that I think it's a couple of things. I think we recognize, we have a much better awareness. I'm a Gen Xer. I like to say, my mom is here, but I like to say I was raised by wolves, because I spent most of my time by myself, and my sister did too. And we just had to get through things, right? I think that society has changed. I think social media have changed us tremendously, and like now we have access to each other and to so much conflicting information. I don't know if human beings are yet able to process how fast, driving at 90 miles an hour, eating a cheeseburger while listening to terrible news. That's a lot for a human being, I think, from an evolutionary perspective to deal with. So I think that, I don't think the awareness was there, and I think that it was just, you know what, you grin and bear it, right? You work and you don't worry about it, and we pretend like it's not an issue. I think we're much more aware that there's an issue. I also think that there's a lot of conflicting and sometimes wrong information out there about what mental health is, and it creates a lot of confusion.
That makes sense. Thank you. I think this next question I liked, because I think it touches on some of your content about the repair
Oh, yeah.
and the importance of repairing. And also maybe for this parent, some of the content on just having some self-compassion for themselves. I love that work out of Dr. Kristen Neff's camp. But this question said, is it too late to undo some of the bad behavior you modeled for your kids if they're already graduating from high school?
I would tell you that it's never too late. It's never too late to connect with someone. I know that sometimes in families, we cut people off and we don't communicate with. I know families where a parent doesn't talk to a child or a sister doesn't talk to a brother. And when those families make that connection, it is world-changing for them. It doesn't have to be a whole big production. It's just making a decision that from today forward, we're going to have a different type of relationship. I think this question speaks to being able to have compassion with ourselves and say, there's no such thing as a perfect parent. I'll tell you that right now. We all make mistakes, and we're all going to continue to make mistakes. So if there's something that you aren't proud that you did, first of all, forgive yourself. Talk to yourself like you would to a friend, and recognize that it's impossible to be perfect. And like I said, children don't need perfect parents. They need parents who can repair. So if I can go to my child, now a teenager, and say, you know what, when you were growing up, I did a couple of things that I'm not proud of, and I really want to do better. And I recognize that when I did those things, it might have been hurtful to you. And so I'm coming to let you know that this is where I stand today, and I really want to do better. I can't imagine how powerful that would be for a child to hear.
That makes sense. Thank you. For this other question, the parent asked, how do you find the balance? I find that parents who are good at self-care often have a hard time extending themselves to the kids and others. And those who don't have self-care have more time for others.
Yeah, I agree. I think that sometimes we believe that self-care is selfish. So I would say, first, check to see, am I judging this person who is practicing, I guess, a lot of self-care negatively because I feel like I can't do that for myself, and I think sometimes that happens. But what's a balance for me is different than for somebody else. And so the only way that you can answer that question is what feels right for you. And I keep going back to, having those values and the goals that you have for your children. What kind of parent do you want to be? I want to be a parent that's at every baseball game. And if that's a priority for you, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But can you also introduce in that day some time for you to recharge just for yourself? They did this interesting study on texting versus calling on the phone, and how if you're feeling alone or anxious or you want to connect with someone, what do? We send a text. When we send that text, the person doesn't feel any better or any more connected. But when you picked up the phone and talked to that person on the phone, it made a huge difference in your ability to feel less stressed, less anxious, and feel connected to another person. And I say that because sometimes self-care is making time for a 10, 15-minute conversation with someone that you haven't talked to for a long time. So it doesn't have to be hours and hours, and it doesn't have to be expensive. It's just, what can I do for me that's going to help me feel like I'm recharging my own batteries? That's the difference, is when we take care of ourselves, when we're less exhausted and we do things that are good for us, it's also good for our children.
Thank you so much. So it sounds like it's just finding that balance and leading with what are your values for yourself.
I would know, you need to know what's right for you, and be careful with like how you're judging someone else or judging yourself against what you think are, society standards, because then you're not doing what's true for you, and it could cause you to put a lot of pressure on yourself unnecessarily.
That makes sense. There was a couple questions. I think it's in line with this content. Not sure if there's anything else that you would elaborate. Just how do we find that balance? Caring for self versus caring for our children.
I think that it really, for me, it really does start with being intentional about what your goals are for yourself. Some parents, for some of us, family is really important, and self-care could be going to church on Sunday with my family, going to Friday night Shabbat services with my family. That self-care, even though I'm doing it with my family, it's something that is important to my spirituality, and I'm taking care of that. So what are your goals for yourself? What outcomes do you want? How would you like your children to grow up? Is there something you want to accomplish in the next 6 months, in a year? And so once you start with that bigger picture, then you can scope down to what does that mean in terms of my behaviors in day to day? What does it mean in terms of my choices? And I would add that, am I practicing healthy boundaries around my needs? And I can't do that if I don't know what my needs are, right? So if I'm just go, then it's going to be impossible for me to know what I actually need and what balance looks like for me. So I really have to start by identifying this is what takes care of me and just me. And from there, I can focus on this is how I want to take care of my children. This is how I'm going to take care of my home, my family, and those other things.
Thank you. That makes sense.
It's a complex question.
Yeah, I think you answered it really well, though. I think we'll have time for one more question. This one seems probably one that in the shorter time you might be able to address. Someone was asking if you could just clarify or explain again the 4-to-1 rule.
Yeah. So 4-to-1 is, think about the interactions that you have with your child on a day-to-day basis. And you want to have, for every correction or every negative interaction, when you're like, having to, no, you can't do that, or you need to sit down and do your homework, or whatever that might be, balance it with 4 positive interactions. And that means just sitting down and having active listening time. It could be just taking time to just sit with them without your phone. It's letting them know that you're proud of them. So those are the 4 are those positive interactions, and those are depositing in our emotional bank account with our child. So every time that we have to, maybe we have to punish them because they did something wrong, or there's something negative that happened, that takes out from the emotional bank account. So you want to have a lot of deposits in there, because when you need to be firm, set a boundary, discipline them, then you're taking from a full account. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So it sounds just being conscientious. If you have to give a redirection or a correction to make a better effort, then for the rest of the day to give some positive, notice the positive too.
Yeah, and it's also what we're doing on a day-to-day, how we're approaching our time with our children more intentionally, I think, on a day-to-day basis. And so much of that is just being with them, just listening to them. I think that, once again, when we're caught up in the go, we don't make time for that. And we may not make time for that with our partner, with our family. We're just sort of doing stuff rather than actually being present with them. And that's what builds the emotional bank account.
Thank you for that. Well, we're running here on time, and I know parents are interested in how they can get their volunteer hours. So I apologize, we won't be able to get to all the questions, but I think we got to most of them. And as I said, the content will be available. But I would like to just reintroduce Mr. Michael Castellano to share a little bit about conclusions and also accessing our hours.
Thank you, Dr. Vincencio. What a great program. I want to thank you personally, and our parents surely appreciate you. So thank you once again.
Mr. Castellano.
What a great job you did. Thank you so much. And behind me, we have the magic QR code for the survey and volunteer hours. Yep, that's fine.
That's you?
Yep. Where
I did
is it?
that. That was me.
So with the survey volunteer hours, if you would, there's a survey section, and there you go.
There you go.
And then there's a volunteer section. So please complete the survey. It gives us information about what your needs are, and what programming you would like going forward. So I do appreciate each and every one of you. If you have little ones with you, take them out for ice cream and maybe start with this positive parenting part of the evening. Thank you so much. Have a good night and drive safely. Thank you all.